Did you know that some of Hollywood's toughest action heroes were completely destroyed by addiction? From Errol Flynn, who was shooting morphine between takes, to Jan-Michael Vincent, whose drug spiral cost him a leg, these weren't just stars, they were full-blown junkies. Here are the 10 worst junkies in action star history, and the tragic stories Hollywood never wanted you to hear. Number 1. Errol Flynn. Before superheroes dominated our screens, there was Errol Flynn, the original action superstar whose swashbuckling adventures in films like Captain Blood made him a household name. But the man who fought pirates on screen was fighting a much deadlier battle off camera. What does the adoring public never see? Flynn's insatiable hunger for narcotics eventually consumed everything: his career, his legendary good looks, and finally, his life. By his 40s, the once dashing hero was injecting a deadly cocktail of morphine and cocaine directly into his veins between takes, sometimes collapsing on set when the drugs wore off. The studios, desperate to protect their investment, covered up Flynn's addiction with elaborate stories about exhaustion and vitamin treatments. Meanwhile, they supplied doctors who kept him just functional enough to stand before cameras. When he died at just 50, the coroner was shocked. His autopsy revealed the internal organs of a man twice his age, ravaged beyond recognition by years of substance abuse. The swashbuckling hero who seemed invincible on screen couldn't defeat the real villain that lived inside him. Addiction so powerful it turned Hollywood's greatest adventure star into a hollow shell of himself. Number 2. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum's tough guy persona made him perfect for action roles in classics like Cape Fear, but his real-life battle with substances makes his on-screen conflicts look tame by comparison. In 1948, at the height of his fame, Mitchum did the unthinkable. He got caught. His arrest for marijuana possession should have ended his career instantly. In 1940s America, drug charges were career death sentences. Yet somehow Mitchum not only survived, but thrived, leading many to wonder just how deep his studio connections ran. What fans never realized was that marijuana was just the tip of Mitchum's substance iceberg. Behind closed doors, his legendary alcohol consumption reached mythic proportions. Director Henry Hathaway once revealed, Mitchum could drink an entire fifth of whiskey and still deliver his lines perfectly. It wasn't talent, it was the tolerance of a hardcore addict. By the 1970s, Mitchum's body was betraying him. The lean, dangerous physique that made him an action icon had bloated dramatically. His once chiseled face became puffy and swollen, yet Hollywood kept casting him, carefully using camera angles to hide the physical devastation. The most shocking part, unlike many on this list, Mitchum never acknowledged his addiction as a problem. Instead, he incorporated his substance abuse into his bad boy persona, making generations of young actors believe that self-destruction was the path to Hollywood coolness. Number 3. John Barrymore. Before action movies even existed, John Barrymore brought athletic dynamism to adventure films like Don Juan. With his perfect profile and commanding presence, he should have had a career for the ages. Instead, his life became a cautionary tale of how quickly addiction can destroy even the brightest star. By the 1930s, Barrymore's alcoholism had progressed to the point where he couldn't function without liquor flowing through his veins. His solution? Hide alcohol everywhere, in prop water bottles, in fake books with hollowed-out centers, and even in specially designed flasks shaped like script pages. The most heartbreaking chapter, in his final years, studios exploited Barrymore's addiction, casting him in roles that mockingly referenced his alcoholism. Audiences laughed at what they thought was brilliant acting, never realizing they were watching a man dying before their eyes. When Barrymore died in 1942, his friend Gene Fowler made the darkest joke of all. "You're not dead yet, Jack. The funeral's tomorrow, and you've never missed an opening." Hollywood had turned one of its greatest talents into a punchline, all while feeding the addiction that killed him. Number 4. Mickey Rourke. In the 1980s, Mickey Rourke seemed destined to redefine action stardom. With his unique combination of raw physicality and vulnerable sexuality in films like 9½ Weeks, he offered something completely different from the muscle-bound heroes dominating the era. Then came the cocaine, mountains of it. What began as recreational partying spiraled into a habit so severe that Rourke became virtually unemployable. Insurance companies refused to cover films starring him after he repeatedly failed to show up on set or arrived too intoxicated to function. The physical transformation was equally shocking. Rourke's once beautiful face, his ticket to stardom, became bloated and misshapen from substance abuse even before his ill-advised boxing career and subsequent botched surgeries completed the destruction. The ultimate tragedy, glimpses of Rourke's extraordinary talent, remained visible even during his darkest periods. Director Darren Aronofsky, who cast him in his 2008 comeback, The Wrestler, revealed, "When Mickey was clear-eyed and present, he could deliver performances no other actor on earth could touch. But those moments became increasingly rare." Rourke's story isn't just about addiction, it's about squandered potential so vast it haunts directors to this day. One major filmmaker confessed anonymously, "Watching Mickey in his prime was like seeing the future of acting. Then watching him destroy himself was like watching the future collapse." Number 5. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's legend seems untouchable. The martial arts master who revolutionized action cinema before his mysterious death at just 32. The official story says he died from cerebral edema after taking a headache pill. But what if everything you thought you knew about Bruce Lee was a carefully constructed myth? Behind the disciplined image, Lee projected a complex relationship with substances that Hollywood has tried to erase from history. According to those closest to him, Lee regularly used cannabis to manage the intense physical pain from his training regimen. More concerning were reports that he used pharmaceutical stimulants to maintain his punishing work schedule and impossible physique. The most shocking revelation came years after his death, when toxicology reports were finally made public. Lee had cannabis in his system when he died, and experts now believe his fatal reaction may have resulted from interactions between various substances in his body. What's most disturbing isn't just that Lee died young, it's that an entire industry conspired to bury this aspect of his story, creating an impossible standard of perfection that continues to harm performers to this day. Number 6. Jan-Michael Vincent. In the early 1980s, Jan-Michael Vincent seemed poised to become America's next great action star. As the helicopter pilot hero of TV's Airwolf, he commanded $200,000 per episode, making him the highest-paid television actor of his time. With chiseled good looks and convincing physical presence, his future seemed limitless. What happened next shocked even hardened Hollywood veterans. Vincent's decline wasn't gradual. It was a free fall so dramatic it redefined how quickly addiction could destroy a career. Within just a few years, the handsome action star had transformed into an unrecognizable shell of himself. His substance abuse began with cocaine, the drug of choice in 1980s Hollywood. But Vincent quickly escalated to a devastating polydrug addiction that included alcohol, Valium, and various opioids. By the final season of Airwolf, his condition had deteriorated so severely that producers were forced to dramatically reduce his screen time and simplify his dialogue. The physical destruction was equally horrific. Multiple DUI accidents left Vincent with permanent injuries, including a crushed larynx that forever altered his distinctive voice. In 1996, drunk driving resulted in a broken neck. By 2012, complications from his lifestyle necessitated the amputation of his right leg. When Vincent died in 2019, few even recognized the name that had once been mentioned alongside Tom Cruise as the future of action cinema. He had been living in obscurity for years, his fortune depleted, his legacy reduced to a cautionary tale. Number 7. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe as an action star, the connection seems absurd until you watch her films closely. Her physical performances in movies like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes required athletic precision and timing that share more DNA with action stardom than most realize. Her dancing sequences demanded bodily control that modern action choreographers would recognize instantly. The dark truth? Monroe's legendary substance abuse began not as a personal weakness, but as a studio-mandated enhancement. MGM doctors prescribed amphetamines to control her weight and keep her working through exhaustion. When these stimulants caused insomnia, they added barbiturates to help her sleep, creating a pharmaceutical prison from which she never escaped. Marilyn wasn't an addict. She was a victim, argued her photographer friend Milton Green years later. The studio got her hooked on pills before she was even a star, then kept her dependent to control her. By the time she realized what was happening, she couldn't function without them. By the early 1960s, Monroe's dependency had made her increasingly unreliable. During the filming of Something's Got to Give, her unfinished final project, she missed 17 of 30 scheduled shooting days, absences studio executives used to justify firing her, though they later attempted reconciliation before her death. When she died on August 5, 1962, the toxicology report found lethal levels of barbiturates in her system. While officially ruled a probable suicide, many experts now believe her death was likely an accidental overdose, resulting from confusion about her medications, a common risk for those juggling multiple prescriptions. The most disturbing aspect? The same studio system that created her addiction later used it to paint her as unstable and difficult when she became too powerful. In death, as in life, her addiction was weaponized against her, a pattern that would repeat with countless stars who followed. Number 8. Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor's contributions to action cinema, in films like Silver Streak and Stir Crazy, helped integrate comedy into the genre while breaking racial barriers. His physical comedy required timing and bodily control that pure dramatic actors could never match. What made Pryor's addiction unique was that he refused to hide it. While other stars on this list maintained careful public images, Pryor incorporated his struggles into his art, creating brutally honest comedy about the realities of substance abuse. The infamous incident that defined his relationship with drugs occurred on June 9, 1980. While freebasing cocaine, a particularly dangerous method of consumption, Pryor accidentally set himself on fire and suffered third-degree burns on over 50% of his body. He later transformed this near-death experience into darkly brilliant comedy, joking, "When you're running down the street on fire, people get out of your way." This honesty made his subsequent relapses all the more heartbreaking. Despite nearly dying, despite knowing better than anyone the consequences, he couldn't stay clean. By the mid-1980s, he had returned to cocaine use even as his body was failing him. Richard knew exactly what he was doing to himself, revealed a close friend who worked with him during his final years. That was the real tragedy. He had complete self-awareness, but still couldn't stop. He'd joke about killing himself with drugs, even as he was actively doing it. The diagnosis of multiple sclerosis in 1986 added cruel new dimensions to his suffering. The disease progressively robbed him of the physical abilities that had made him a star, while the cocaine accelerated his decline. By the time of his death in 2005, the once electrifying performer had spent years confined to a wheelchair, a shadow of his former self. Number 9. River Phoenix. River Phoenix should have redefined action stardom for a new generation. His physical performances in films like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, where he played a young Indiana Jones with convincing athleticism, suggested limitless potential. Industry insiders predicted he would evolve into one of Hollywood's most versatile action stars, combining physical ability with emotional depth in ways no previous actor had managed. The shocking contradiction between Phoenix's public image and private reality makes his case particularly devastating. To fans, he was the ultimate clean living star, a vegan environmental activist who represented a new, more conscientious approach to celebrity. Behind this carefully constructed facade lurked a young man spiraling into addiction with alarming speed. Friends later revealed that his drug use began on the set of Gus Van Sant's My Own Private Idaho, where he researched his role as a street hustler by spending time with actual drug users. What started as method acting evolved into genuine addiction, a transformation so unexpected that even those closest to him missed the warning signs. By 1993, Phoenix was regularly using cocaine, heroin, and various other substances, while maintaining his public persona as health-conscious and clean living. The psychological strain of this double life showed in his increasingly erratic behavior on sets. On October 31, 1993, outside the Viper Room nightclub in West Hollywood, the 23-year-old actor collapsed after consuming a lethal speedball, a combination of cocaine and heroin that has claimed numerous Hollywood lives. As his body convulsed on the sidewalk, his sister Rain tried desperately to save him, while his brother Joaquin made a panicked 911 call that would later be played on national television. Phoenix's death represents not just the loss of an extraordinary talent, but a shocking reminder that addiction doesn't discriminate based on image or ideology. The young man who seemed least likely to fall became one of Hollywood's most tragic casualties. Number 10. Judy Garland. Judy Garland is rarely discussed as an action performer, but this categorization misses the physical demands of her performances. Her dancing in films like The Wizard of Oz required the same bodily control and endurance demanded of any action star. Had she been born in a different era, her physical talents might well have been channeled into conventional action roles. What makes Garland's case particularly heartbreaking is how young her addiction began and who caused it. At just 13 years old, MGM studio executives decided she needed to lose weight. Their solution? Amphetamines to suppress her appetite, paired with barbiturates to help her sleep at night. A child wasn't just allowed, but actively encouraged to become dependent on dangerous substances. By her late 20s, Garland's dependency had progressed to the point where she attempted suicide multiple times. When she was fired from Annie Get Your Gun in 1949, it wasn't for lack of talent, but because her addiction had made her unreliable. Her 1954 comeback in A Star Is Born suggested potential for career rehabilitation, but the damage was already done, both physically and psychologically. When Garland died of a barbiturate overdose in 1969 at 47, the coroner noted that her body showed signs of long-term drug use that had aged her far beyond her years. Her autopsy revealed that the physical damage from decades of prescription drug abuse had made her death inevitable. The most disturbing aspect of Garland's story is how preventable it was. She wasn't born an addict. She was created by a system that viewed child stars as commodities rather than humans. Her addiction wasn't a moral failing, but a predictable outcome of institutional abuse that continues in more subtle forms to this day. These action stars may have taken down villains on screen, but behind the scenes, their battles with addiction were even darker. The truth is shocking, the story's untold, but what's the real cost of fame and stardom? If you're still reeling from these jaw-dropping revelations, don't miss out. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because we've got more explosive stories coming your way. Who's next? You won't believe what we've uncovered about Hollywood's toughest stars. Stay tuned, because the truth is always more dangerous than fiction.